Good evening, everyone. Sorry for that minor delay. I had to restart the stream just now because I had the incorrect title. So I'm back. Yeah, I'm not going to be as long this evening, but hopefully we will be able to cover some ground pretty quickly. I'm going to be finishing up on the up and coming Barbershop project, as I mentioned on Twitter. So follow along. I'm gonna jump into VS Code shortly. Just to remind you that the music this evening, as always, is from Creators Lib on YouTube. You can go and check them out, and they produce free music and sound effects for content creators like myself. Alright, so if all of that said and done, let's hop over to Google Chrome and VS Code, and we will try to finish this mockup today, this first mockup. Next time around, we'll probably be working on the second iteration, so you can stick around for that, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so here we go. Now, last time around, I would have built basically the main structure of this mockup, so all that I have to do now is finish putting the items in place, like the menu and the header bar, which is supposed to have an image, of course, and then we were supposed to put some lines on either side here. This testimonial also has to be filled in, and I do need to make a minor fix, which you will notice later on when I resize this window, because there's some items that are a little bit out of place. I didn't get the chance to fix those during the week, which I wanted to do, so I will probably have to fix them today if I get the time. Alright, so let's go. And the first thing I want to do is address this section up here, and then I'll fix this one down here because this is not the right size. Very sizy window. Let me just see. Okay, it isn't actually fixing the size, so I will try to fix that before I go any further. Alright, let me see which one this is. This is home, that we're in right now. Oh, sorry, this is index. I forget index loads home. So this is index.html, and we're gonna just need to find the second nav, I believe it is. Yeah, that's this one here, UNC main nav. Oops, pressed the wrong thing there. Alright, so let's see what's happening with this. This is supposed to be 60 pixels high. For some reason it is not. So I'm gonna have to debug what went wrong. I'm gonna try using minimum. Yep, minimum height fixed it. Although really and truly we shouldn't have to use minimum height. So I'm gonna have to find out why height isn't working. Let me take off display flex for the time being. That didn't solve it either. So it's not the display. Well, you know what? When in doubt, choose gas, as we used to say. Minimum height worked. I'm gonna stick with that. Not gonna stress myself trying to figure out what it is that is causing that issue, but it should actually just work with height. I'm not sure why minimum height was required here. I'd probably have to dig around and figure out what exactly is causing that issue. Let me just, well, yeah, it's not actually in anything, so I'm not sure why that issue. I'm gonna check the body though, because okay, the body is set to display flex. That might be why. So actually, let me see something here a second. If I take this out from the body, okay, it was the body that was causing that issue. So we're gonna just have to stick. Well, you know what? Instead of me sticking with minimum height, I'm gonna fix the issue by not using flex on the body. Even though technically using flex on the body is useful for other reasons, I'm gonna just take flex off the body and leave it as is. So that fixed that one problem. Alright, the header, we need to find that next. Now, by the way, debugging is a big part of design, especially when you're doing it with CSS, so don't ever be afraid if you have issues while you're designing and you have to stop and debug things. It's just a part of how this all goes. Alright, so let me see here. This, I believe, already should have the correct height. Probably what is happening, these are not in position correctly. So what I need to find, this is the nav for the socials. Right, that's why that's giving me some extra space. Position, use absolute instead of fixed. Well, me fixed instead of absolute. And right, I just need to make sure it's not actually within the header element. Good, so we're going to use position fix, and then we're going to put them to the top left of the window. So use a set 0, which is top to 0, right to auto, bottom to auto, and left to 0. Can move this up just to keep things in alphabetical order as well. Alright, seeing as this is a UL element to keep things semantic, the next step I need to do is to style the contents of it individually. So we'll have UNC socials nav, and then LA. I'm going to give each of these a height. Well, better yet, yeah, let's give them a height. I was thinking padding, but come to think of it, I'm actually jumping ahead of myself here in my head. Forgive me, sometimes this happens on the fly as I'm designing. I remember something that could be done better. So let's use the anchor elements that are within them. And let me just double check they're all anchor elements, because some may be buttons. So I just want to make sure I don't get that wrong. Okay, that's the home, so I can close that. Okay, yeah, all our anchor elements. We could use a button for a contact thing. So what I'm going to do actually is add a class to this to make life easier. So we can have social as a class, or better yet, UNC social, just to keep our naming convention intact. We use UNC social there. And I'm going to add that class to each of these so that if I do use another element, such as a button, there are no issues. Keep everything consistent. Alright, then I'm going to set padding to 10px and 15px. I also forgot to set the display on this one. So let me set this to display flex and flex flow to row and no wrap. You just make sure I can see that these are being padded as they should be. Solid red. Well, I actually do need to style those LA elements, those list elements. So UNC socials nav LA display flex. Good, there we go. No, they don't have images within them at this point in time, and I'm going to fix that. So their width will be actually standard when we have images. So what I'm going to do is set a width on them right away to about 50 pixels on each one. Let me set that to max width actually. And I believe this should already have bot sizing set on. Okay, yeah, it does have bot sizing set on everything. Try, if I remember correctly, using display block may actually fix one of my issues. Well, it didn't actually fix the issue I'm looking at. Some of them have a different width, and that is a problem. We don't want that. Let me see if this padding is... Nope, not that either. This is where sometimes CSS can get a little frustrating, because sometimes, no matter how much you know, you can't seem to find the source of a problem. Alright, now it's really embarrassing me because I'm not quite sure what is the issue here. So I need to double check and see if I'm missing anything else. And now my mouse doesn't want to move. There we go, mouse. I think my mouse had a long day. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. Oh, I see what I did wrong. I have the nav being styled, but I did not style the menu. So I knew something wasn't right there. So what I need to fix actually is the menu. So this is socials nav here. We do have that in the right position, and we do have the right display and everything on it. But what I was missing, I forgot to check and see if I had these within anything else. So that should be socials menu, display flex. I'm not as clueless as I was appearing to be. It's just that I was forgetting this one little detail. Alright, so we want flex start for this. And we want flex flow to be raw, no wrap. We are also going to set this to list style none. List style, right, list style none. Alright, I'm trying to remember if I'm missing anything else. I don't think so. Alright, so let me give these a background color just temporarily. This is all for the sake of debugging. Okay, right. So here's what I was doing wrong. And it's always good to know your mistakes. So here's what I was doing wrong just now. I had the width set on the parent, which should be the container, and not the child, because the child will affect the width of the parent automatically. So what I just did is move the width from UNC Socials Nav to UNC Social, well, UNC Socials Nav LA to UNC Socials Nav UNC Social. But what I also need to do now, I remember, is actually change these selectors to use the menu instead of the nav, because the menu is the actual container of these elements here. And this can be frustrating, I will admit, because there's so much complication, when in reality you shouldn't need all that. And that is because of the way how menus work in HTML. Because we don't actually have a menu element, a dedicated menu element. We only have an order list to produce our menus, and that's the only semantic way to do it. But yeah, that's what it is. You just have to work with it. Alright, so I'm going to set padding on these again. 10px, and this time I'm going to use 0 on the sides. Now since these are anchor elements, I'm going to need to set them to display flex as well. Or I could use display block if I feel like using that, but I like flex instead. So I'm going to use display flex. Now not to worry about the alt text, that will not be shown once we have images in place, and they should actually use their correct height. I'm going to actually go ahead and set a height one time too. Right. So the alt text for now will overflow them, but that's expected until we have the images in place. I'm going to change height to aspect ratio, seeing as I really like using that these days. It's a modern solution, and it makes sure that things remain consistent no matter what. So if I change the width, the height will change as well. So if I change this to 80, of course the height changes along with it. Right. And we can take back off this border because we don't need it. And I can take out this background color here because we don't need that either. What I am going to do is add margins around these. So they will have a margin of 5 pixels by 0 pixels, just to give a little bit of space between each one. Although, really and truly, the way I could do this, you don't need a margin because you want that when the user moves their mouse from object to object, it allows them to click immediately. So actually, now I'm kind of like correcting myself on the fly again. I know I do this a lot, my apologies. But yeah, I'm going to take that back out and just leave it like this. That should work just fine. Now, the next thing I need to do is actually add those images. If not, we're not going to see them. So what I'm going to do is actually copy those images from another project. You're not going to see this part because I'm using my file manager off screen from what you can see. So you're not going to see that part. Alright, so I'm going to pull up those images from my website actually. Alright, so I'm grabbing Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, that should do it for now. I'm going to need a contact icon as well, but I'll have to grab that from somewhere else. So I'm going to drop these in that folder where we're working. Let me see, that is... I'm actually lost as to where to... There it is. I know y'all can't see any of this right now. You'll probably just see my mouse moving around the screen, but you won't actually see what's happening. My apologies. It's just that I have a little issue with GNOME shell flickering whenever I use the desktop. Whenever I show the desktop. So that's why that happens. And I have to use a different setup in order to display stuff on the screen without flickering. Alright, we're almost there. I'm just going to paste these now, and let me see, this should show up if I have the names correct. If not, I'll just have to fix those names. So let me see what we have. Oh, we don't actually have them in place. My mistake. So that's fb.png. Forgot to add image and icon. Well, socials. Sorry, image socials. There it is. So we have our Facebook icon. We have Twitter. And we will have Instagram. Oh, the contact and share buttons. I forgot those as well. So let me grab those. I'm not even sure if I have a dedicated share button in here. So I'll probably just have to... Yeah, I do have a dedicated share button, but it is technically not correct. So, well, I mean, no, it's not correct. It's just not familiar. So you'll kind of figure out what this is just by looking at it. I hope. Alright, let's see here. We have img socials share.png. This should actually have come in the second one. This is I put this in contact. So let me just move this down to here. And contact is what this one should read. So I'm going to copy that over as well. And then everything should work. Alright, that should be everything. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot share wasn't renamed correctly, so it's not showing up. Yeah, there we go. That should be everyone, no? Should be in theory, but yeah, the share button is still not showing. I have share.png, and what did I do wrong here? Still not showing share.png for some reason. Oh, I put this in the wrong thing. My bad. I put it in href instead of image. There it is. So there, we have our socials in place. I'm just going to round the corners of those buttons. Now, since this is custom, we don't need to worry that there will be any other images on these socials nav, so we can just go ahead and use a selector as simple as this. UNC socials menu image, and then we can add border radius 50% to round those corners. And there you go. Now, typically I use these icons with no color behind them, and I am actually going to switch them to just plain white icons in a bit, but I just wanted to get them in place and see what they would look like in a general sense first. Now I don't remember, I was seeing this little thing behind here. That's for the header. I forgot that will show in the corner as well because we don't have the header image in place. So I'm going to grab that one for you and drop that in as well. Just need to open the mockup SVG and then export that image, and we should be able to use that right away. And of course, Inkscape decided to crash as opposed to being nice. Alright, while we wait for that to open, I will try to add some more features to this. Or at least do some more fixes. So this this header bar should be 536 pixels at least. Or at least that's how big the image will be. But we will need it to be flexible. So what I'm going to do is just go right ahead and add selector for the image. So you see main header image. And this I will set it to width 100% and height auto. And then on the parent, I'm going to set overflow hidden. Alright, Inkscape is ready for me, so let me see if I can go ahead now and export this image without crashing. Yeah, it looks like I should be able to do that. I was using the wrong version because I have two different versions installed. That was the issue there. Alright, so I'm going to export the image and then we can pull that in on the header bar. There it is. It does look a little stretched to me. Maybe it's just my... yeah, I think it's just my eyes were seeing that when it wasn't really so. So yeah, I was seeing stretching that technically wasn't there. So you can ignore me with my stretching comment. It isn't stretched, as it turns out. What I am going to do though is give the header a little more height. So let me see. Let me use a bigger ratio here. Oh, but there's a problem. If we do that though, the image is not going to cover the whole thing. And I don't want to cut any of the image off either. So let me see if I can tweak this just a bit and still maintain a larger header. Okay, 55 well, 0.55 seems to do the trick. Yeah, so we got a slightly larger header, but still keep the image in place at the right size. And it should fit the ratio that I use on the mock-up image as well, which I can actually open from over here. Projects, up and cutting. Wait. Actually, it looks like it's bigger over here, doesn't it? But then again, if I scale it down to the size of the screen, not really. It's actually pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. So, yeah, we're not off. It's just the full SVG image when it is scaled to its normal size. It looks bigger, but yeah, it is the correct size. So good. There we go. I nailed it. These social icons don't actually look bad with the color. No, I have the image in place. but I'm probably still going to want to have them as white icons, but with a dark background. So what I'm going to do here is actually go ahead and add a background to those items and see if this will look as I imagine it to. Yeah, doesn't look bad. Now yeah, you can add a background color to images as well, by the way, for those who are not aware. And you can add padding and everything like that. Just that you can't use them as parents for something else, because they're technically not containers. I'm also going to add some padding to the nav just to shift things across. So I'm going to add padding on the right side. And nowhere else of the nav will have any padding. Alright, that's not working there. Let me move it down the menu. That should fix the problem. Still no? Alright, what did I do wrong here? Is my computer mocking me, or am I just missing something? Alright, 0, 35, oops, 0, 35 px, 0, 0. Still no? Alright, who is to blame here? Probably Flexbox, and I'm not catching onto it. Is it? I don't think so. Alright, so let's see something here. I'm gonna have to debug this. Border 1px solid red. Let's try this padding again and see if it is added. Oh wait, you know what my problem was? I can't believe this. I mixed up left and right. Something must be wrong with me. I don't know how I did that. I completely had my left and right mixed up. That is absolutely embarrassing, but it happens. Alright, probably not gonna have it so far across. So 15, yeah, 15 does the trick. I'm gonna take off the gap between these. If I have one, that is. I don't see any, so I'm not sure why there's so much space in between them. Oh wait, the body doesn't have flex on it anymore, so let me take all these values. Alright, socials nav is using row wrap, but no gap. This is using flex, so no gap. Oh, now I get it. These have padding on them, so let me just take this out. Actually, interesting. There's no padding on the sides, but padding on the top still causes the images to resize. That is interesting. Alright, so what we're going to have to do is leave those at 65 pixels. Add margin to the image. Oops, what did I just do? Okay, maybe not that much. Like 5 pixels or maybe 8 or so should do the trick. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is much better than what I was doing originally. I should have actually probably plotted this out before showing you all of this, because it may confuse you slightly. But in any case, I don't mind showing my mistakes, even as someone who knows what they're doing. So the idea here is, and I'll demonstrate with a border, the idea here is that each of these elements is technically side by side. So what the user will actually click on are the boxes that are surrounded by red, even though they're transparent. So they're not going to see that there's a box outside the image. But as far as their mouse or their finger, if they're tapping, is concerned, this entire target that you can see in red is, well, this entire box, so you can see in red is the target. And we can expand that target, for instance, by making it bigger. Like, you can go for 75 pixels in width, and then you can add a bigger margin to your image and still have some good spacing and everything, and the target is no bigger. Now, if you want, you can even space these a little differently, so you can have like 15 at the top, 0 to the right, 15 at the bottom, and 5 to the left, and that will shift them across a little bit. Now, one of the challenges is because of the way how Flexbox works, I believe it is, you're going to have these being shifted downward because of the padding on the top. Oh yeah, and also because I have bot sizing enabled, sorry. So I have it enabled with border bot. Oops, I didn't mean for that to happen. I have border bots enabled as the bot sizing value, so let me see if I change that out. It should what am I typing? If I change bot sizing to content box, sorry. Okay, yeah, it did change things slightly, did it? I think. Or am I remembering or seeing incorrectly, sorry. Okay, it did change things slightly. I thought it would, and it did. It's just it wasn't that noticeable. But yeah, content box will give you a slightly different result because it will resize according to the padding inside. Border box will not, which is the default that we're using here. But anyway, that was just for demonstration purposes. Just going to put it back to what it was. And also, as you can tell, the playlist finished, so I'm going to have to fix that. One second, folks. I'm gonna have another playlist going just now. Alright, there we go. Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna add margins back to these again. Or better yet, another way we can do this, I can demonstrate to you. You can use height or width. So I'm going to set height to something like 75%. Then I'm going to set aspect ratio to 1:1. Right, and it's going to keep the same height and width. Now I can then adjust from here to any size I want. Still keeping the targets the same size. And what I can do within the target, seeing as it's set to display flex, is align item center and then justify content whichever way I want to justify it. So I could have it centered, I could have it to flex end, or I could have it to flex start, of course. I'm going to go with center in this case. But this is just showing you there are different options for laying this out. And those options can be useful. Let's say if you wanted to make your targets wider. So let me take off aspect ratio here. Oops. Well, yeah, let me replace that with height, because if not, the images are going to be huge, because we're using Flexbox and no height was set. So it just basically decided whatever you want. Alright, so I'm going to set the height to 50, and let's say we set the width to 175. The images still remain the same size, but now they're distributed differently. Alright, so let me just set that back to where I had it before. That was, again, for demonstration purposes. Alright, now the last thing I'm going to do is switch these social media icons to some blank ones with just white icons instead of colors. So just give me a minute, let me grab them from another of my projects that I've been working on. I should have some plain white social media icons lying around somewhere. I found some for Facebook and Instagram instantly, but I don't think I have one for well, Facebook and Twitter. I don't think I have one for Instagram laying around immediately, so I'll probably have to fix that. In any case, they look a lot better now because they're plain white instead of the colored background. And I'm going to change the dark background behind them just a little bit because it's a little too bold, I guess, too dark. Okay, maybe not that light. Another trick we could use here too, by the way, which I've done on another site, was using a border radius that is actually curved around the bottom and straight at the top. So I'm going to do that here. 35%, 0. If I remember correctly, let me see. I don't always remember border radius offhand. Alright, I had it in the wrong direction. I should say I don't always remember which values to use offhand for border radius to get rounded corners top and bottom, but there we are. So first two is to 0 and then the second two to 35%, or we could even go for like 15. That's a lot nicer. And we can then move these images up using margin. So margin top minus 5 pixels. Okay, more than that needed to get them right to the top. Good, about 18 pixels there. And so now you have them hanging down from the top of the window. And what I'm also going to do is add a hover state for these images. So UNC social hover img background color RGBA 35 35 35.8, and let's also add a transition here. I don't remember if I had a variable for this. Let me just double check. Okay, I didn't. So I'm going to actually add a variable for transitions. UNC transition normal 0.25 seconds. Good, so now when we mouse over any of these, they will darken quite nicely. And what I'm actually going to do to make this animation look even nicer, move the transition down here, duplicate this, move that up here, and I'm going to change this to 2.5 instead of saying 2.5 seconds, and then I will use calc. Alright, where is it? I think I just scrolled. Yep, I scrolled right past it. Alright, so we're going to use calc here and multiply this by 2 and put S at the end. That should work, I believe. Or did I get that wrong? Oh no, I had to put the seconds inside. My bad. So to put this to... Alright, I have it at 0.25, so I'm going to need 8, actually, because I want it to be 2 seconds. Right, so when it is hovered, it will move in at... Oh wait, I also need to put this here to calculate to 1 second, well, 0.25 of 1 second. Right, there we go. So now when we hover over them, they will animate at 0.25 seconds, and when they are unhovered, basically it will go back to 2 seconds instead of 1. Instead of 0.25, I mean. I was mixing myself up there, getting not so much tongue twisted, but brain twisted. Not sure why that happens to me. Anyway, alright, so I'm going to change this to 4 seconds now, and then you can see the difference. Or I could change it to something pretty massive, like, say, 20 seconds. You see how slow that is. But the point is, by using Calc as opposed to just having a regular preset variable, you can adjust your animation speeds to whatever you want based on something that's already existent. So I have 2.5 as my constant, if you will, and I can just multiply by any number I want, any number of seconds, and I get a value fed back to my code, and I can use that wherever I want, and however I want. Alright, so I'm going to take off these borders. Don't need them anymore. That was just really and truly for demonstration purposes. Now, you'll notice too that whenever these are reloaded, that they slowly move into place. Well, more like when I edit the CSS. So like if I write a comment here, save. Right, you'll see them animate back into place. So we don't want that to happen. The reason that's happening, nothing is normalized, okay? So I'm going to actually copy over the normalizer CSS file and include it in the project, and that should fix everything. And just by the way, good practice to use a normalizer in any project you're doing that's supposed to go live anywhere, because it will prevent that issue from happening. Right, just copied it over, and now I'm going to link it up. Now always put the normalize before your own CSS, because it resets everything, and you really don't want any clashes with anything like that. Alright, so now if I go ahead and add that comment back, what did I just do? I just pressed. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, still doing the same thing. That's slightly frustrating. Probably this normalize is not covering that. It should though. If not, I would probably have to just normalize the images myself, which I don't really feel like doing, to be honest. So what I'm going to do actually, but typically, just so you know, typically it works. But as is the case with most computer related stuff, whenever you try to demonstrate, it doesn't work. It just so happens that this normalized CSS I'm using probably doesn't cover this one particular thing here, which is the margin of images. So it's not resetting those, and obviously I'm getting that problem. So what I'm going to do instead is set the margin on our anchor elements, and that should solve the issue. Alright, so we have the margin top here to -18 pixels. I'm going to drop that on these. Now they're still animating, unfortunately, because of the fact that the images actually have their own padding and everything, and the normalizer doesn't cover padding on the images, so that's why we're getting that issue. Slightly frustrating, but shouldn't be too much of a big deal. All we have to do is change the animation speed so it's not as noticeable to users. So let me just find that back around here and change the animation speed to something lower. Shouldn't be too noticeable once you get it down to the right speed. And plus, when you reload the page, naturally that doesn't happen. So not too big of a deal. I'm going to change the padding at the top, by the way, when they're hovered as well. Oops, to make this come down. Can look really nice when you do that. Or, so that we don't crush the images, let me add margin bottom That should do the trick, I believe. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Now, don't worry about this Instagram icon. That will be fixed when I can get around to finding a blank one. But everything else is in place. Now, what we want to do though is add some tooltips to these icons. So I'm going to go right ahead and do that. And to do that, what I'm going to do, each of these I'm going to add a data attribute to. So that will be data tooltip. Could be called anything you want really, but we're going to use data tooltip for this. And I'm going to add a description for each one to those tooltips. Data tooltip Facebook, and for the next one, Twitter. Now it's looking, with the time that I gave myself for this stream, like we're not going to finish everything in this mock-up today. Just means we'll have to come back next week and finish it again. But at least we did get the majority of what I wanted to do done. And with the last few minutes I have, I'm going to probably add in the secondary menu, because this is the socials menu. This is technically a menu as well. And if I remember correctly, on the mock-up we had a third menu. Let me just see. Okay, this image doesn't have it. Should be somewhere inside one of the other images. Oh, that image does have it. My mistake. It's just that Chrome can't show pages in SVGs. At least not yet. It's part of the standard, but it's not actually supported in Chrome yet, so you couldn't see it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add Inkscape to the screen, and you should be able to see it in a second. Right, there we go. Wait, that's the wrong window for Inkscape. Alright, let me open the other window. I have this file open twice, so... Right, here we are. So on the original mockup, you'll notice that we have... well, no, this has all the layouts and stuff, but this doesn't have the... There was one piece in the wireframe that I don't remember I forgot to add to the mockup, so I'll have to open the wireframe. But in the wireframe itself, and I forgot to add this to the mockup, in the wireframe itself we have a secondary menu that opens on mobile devices, and it's technically the main menu, which is... Let me just turn this off for a second. The main menu is actually this thing right here that says showcase up and cutting and locations, but that will transform on your mobile devices. So we're going to use media query to change to a different menu. So let me show you what that will look like back over in Inkscape. I'm not actually seeing it in the list. Am I? Alright, yeah, here's the fun of computers again on display, because I open the window and now what you call it, OBS Studio can't see it. So I'll have to go again. Alright, y'all should be able to see it now. There we go. Great, so here it is. This menu here is actually this menu right here. So what happens is when we are on mobile view, it will change the layout altogether. Now what I changed from the wireframe to the mockup is that the social icons are actually shown on the main header. Well, on the header, not the main header. They're shown on the header whether or not we are on mobile view. So that's one difference from the wireframe that I made. And when we go to mobile view, all this stuff here will get collapsed into something similar to a carousel. But basically, you'll be able to click buttons and move between each one, and then the menu up here will become, well, the menu over here will become the menu up here just with a button. So this button will actually appear on mobile view, and this menu here will transform from a horizontal bar into something that's vertical and covers the entire page. Now, seeing as I have just a little time before I hop off, what I'm going to do actually is create the framework, if you will, to transform this menu into the mobile menu, but I'm not going to leave it enabled. So I'm just going to set that, I'm going to write that up in a separate, not in a separate class, a separate declaration block using the same class, and then turn it back off, and when we come back next week, we will actually make that work responsively. So let me see, this here is UNC, I believe that is main nav, yeah, there we go. So UNC main nav, and we're doing this at the bottom of the file so that it automatically overwrites whatever we have at the top, which is what you can see on screen currently. Oops, I forgot to turn this window back off so you couldn't see that. Alright, my mistake. Alright, you should be able to see it now. UNC main nav, I'm at the bottom of the CSS file as I mentioned, and I'm going to add whatever we need now to turn this into a mobile menu. So position fixed, and already you see it got shifted over to the side. Now we need a set to 0, sets it to the top, and then we can set 0 for everything else. Actually, sometimes inset doesn't work as I intend, so I'm going to set these manually, and I believe, oh, you know what, I forgot the height is set, so we apologize to inset and remember that I have height added, so I'm going to have to put height to auto, or better yet, let me set height to initial. Right, there we go, that cleared everything up. We also want to add the index this time because in this case it is technically below some other stuff, so the index of 1 should fix that. Just scroll to make sure there are no crazy conflicts. And I believe this is already using display flex, so we can set flex flow to column. Alright, let me double check and see if it is using display flex. Should be, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, it is using display flex. So what is happening here? Oh, I see what happened. We have another menu inside of that. So I actually do need to set a second class again. I need to keep these things in mind. It happens from time to time, but anyway. It's called humanity. So yeah, UNC main menu, flex flow, column, and there we go. That fixed it. Now instead of justify content, because now that the axis that we're using, the axes that we're using are flipped once you change it from row to column, you have to switch around how you think about your align items and your justify content. So align items now will do what justify content does when it is set to row, whereas justify content will do what align items normally does when it's set to column. Well, when it's set to row, sorry. So I'm going to change justify content now from being center to being space around, or sorry, space between. Let me just see if this is set to the height of its container 100%. Right, there we go. Let me use space around because space between is going to put them at the ends. That's not really what I want. So there we go now. Now if you don't like how this is because it's too wide, you can still have these kind of closer together. So instead of using justify content, we could use a gap. And we could put it to something, say like maybe 30 pixels or something. Or a little more than that. And if you don't want to have a gap so that when you move from one item to the next, that the mouse doesn't have any space between it, what you can do instead is set spacing on the contents. So UNC main menu LA, and then we can add some space to these using padding. Now let me see what's inside these LA before I go any further. Just need to double check. Alright, all of these are buttons, and I don't think we're going to add links to these, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to add a class. Just like we did before with the social nav. So for this, I'm going to have UNC main item as our class. I'm going to add it to each one of these. And this is just so that in case, let's say our client were to tell us, I'd like to have a link in that menu, which violates what we've designed, but still the client is always right at the end of the day. Not really, but sometimes you have to go with what the client wants. So let's say they wanted a link somewhere over here that takes you to some other site or something. You can still have your link respect everything else without having to like select it directly. Just add a class that can be used for any element instead of just using buttons. So I'm going to use UNC main item, as you just saw me do, as our class to cover everything. And then we're going to add padding to these, of course. Good, so now they're spaced nicely. So as you saw, there were multiple ways to achieve spacing. We could have done it through the parent, or we could do it through the child. And we could do it in the parent using justify content, which should be space between or space around. And then we can also use gap, but that will leave us with spaces between these items, which we don't really want. Let me just demonstrate also what I mean by that. So I'm going to add UNC main menu LI as a selector and add a border to it. Now there's still spacing around it, so let me just take that off actually, because it shouldn't be there. Oh yeah, let me see something up here, if there's any gap inside of here. No, there isn't. Main menu, still no gap. And LA, oh wait, that's still, that was the wrong one, sorry about that. Alright, so yes, there is a gap in the original declaration block, but on mobile we don't want that gap. So what we're going to do, set gap to 0. Right, so now there's no space. And so what happens now is, let's say a user is on a mobile device, but they're still using a mouse, for instance. You don't want necessarily to have gaps between these two. And it may not even be on a mobile device. It might really just be on anything. You don't really want to have gaps between these two so that when they're trying to click on something, that they end up clicking outside of it, right? You want them to be able to directly tap on whatever is within here that's all related to one another. So we're going to remove all gaps on mobile. And sometimes I do this on any form factor really, because it's a good practice to remove those gaps. If you want, of course, big targets. If you're using smaller targets, then you definitely need space. But the bigger the target, the less space you need. And if it's like a really big target like this, sometimes you can keep them close together to avoid users having to be, you know, like moving their mouse too far to go where they're trying to get. But sometimes spacing is good. Just so I clarify that, spacing is still good because you don't want to have people clicking on something they don't mean to. So if you have, as I said, a smaller target, consider adding some spacing to it. Alright, so last thing here, the width of these elements. I'm going to set the parent to width 100%. And the child, of course, will also be with 100%. And there you go. So that's everything we need. Can take off now this border. No longer need that. And if you want, you can add a hover state to these items when they're on mobile. So I'm going to add hover here. And background color. I'm going to set this to kind of a gray. Let me see what we had up here for our alright, we had UNC color and UNC background color. So we're going to flip those around now on mobile when they're hovered. So the background color will become UNC color and the color will become var UNC background color. Oops, not black. Background color. Oh, you know what? I had BG color. That's why I wasn't finding it. BG color, right. So now we hover these. That's what we get. And we can add a nice transition to them as well. Transition calc var UNC transition normal, multiply by 2 seconds, or maybe we can increase this a bit. I forgot when we were using transition a shorthand that we can also add in these other values. So like we can have everything transition. We can have oh, and I also forgot to add these seconds there. Sorry, we can have ease and out as well. Sorry, there we go. We get a nice transition on that. Then we can speed this up. That's 5 seconds. Well, I mean that would actually be a quarter of 5 seconds, whatever that would come out to be. I'm not calculating that right now. So we don't want that. We can bring down that speed a little bit. Good, that looks much nicer. Now the last thing we'll need is something to turn the menu on and off. So we'll add another class here, which is UNC menu opener. When that's added, display will be set to none. So that when it is removed, this will be set to flex, which it automatically is already. And since it's already at the bottom here, that will cover everything when it actually gets activated. But next week I'll show you how to do that. Just gonna need some JavaScript and a button. The button will get added, of course, if it isn't already there. Let me just double check. Alright, so we didn't add the button for that. So let me just go ahead and add in this button and a comment to tell us what that button will be for. Alright, and I'm going to comment out all of these down here so that they no longer will clash with the rest of the stuff. So next week, we will finally be able to finish this mock-up. I was hoping to finish it today, but time kind of got away from me, so I'll have to finish this up next week. But that's no big deal. Always good to take your time. But it shouldn't take too long, so next week's stream shouldn't be too long. We'll just be adding the button to turn the mobile menu on and off. By then I should have the transparent Instagram icon as well, so that won't be any big deal. And finally, we will be adding, I'm not sure what this gray bar is here. Oh, that's the button. Yeah. I didn't even remember that was going to be shown there. So let me comment that button out altogether. Don't need that to be showing yet. Right. So other than that, we'll add the events and story, which don't really need to be there per se, because I mean they're just something that would get filled in eventually, but we could probably add like a little, you know, mock-up of what an event and story may look like. But those are dynamic elements that might change even in terms of their design to some extent, depending on what your client is going to do. So like they may have regular events coming up, and they may maybe just an image or whatever. Yeah, that's not too much of a concern. But yeah, the other thing is these lines here, and then the layout, which I can probably show you before I go. So let me minimize VS Studio Code. And I'm going to resize this Chrome window so y'all can see the full thing. Right. So you'll notice when this is resized that this image here comes across too far, and I'm going to need to fix that. And I believe the reason for that was me using floats, but the parent, I think, is what I have to fix. If I remember correctly from when I was testing, I need to fix the parent so that this image will come to the right position. I also need to find out what's causing this to scroll outside the view like this. Probably this image. So I'll probably just need to look into that to fix that. Because it does look like the image is overflowing the parent, despite me turning on overflow hidden. So I'm not really sure why that's happening. I'll have to look into what I missed there. But yeah, so those are the only items that we have outstanding. Everything else is in place. And the really cool thing about doing mockups like this is that when you do a live mockup, you can even just, like, if your client okays it, you can go ahead and say, well, alright, I'm going to use this as the final website. And if your client says, well, I don't really like it, but, you know, maybe if you tweak this or tweak that, you don't have to go back to the drawing board and do everything from scratch. Plus, the other cool thing is, as I would have shown you since last week, when you, let me turn back on Visual Studio Code here a second. Yeah, so when you separate your HTML from your CSS in the way that we did it, you're able to rewrite the entire layout without having to rewrite any of this content. So all this content here can remain the same, and we can play around with this CSS as much as we want. So after we finish this mockup, as I would have mentioned in the previous episodes, what I'm going to come back and do is use the same HTML but change the CSS completely and show you how you can build a completely different layout and keep the same content, so that you save yourself development time and a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, that's it for this week. I hope that you got something out of this, despite my occasional mistakes. I am very human, and that is very demonstrable every week. But I don't mind hiding my mistakes, because mistakes and errors, I mean, they're practically the same thing. But yeah, you get the point. Making mistakes and sometimes forgetting things and all that, all of those are a part of not only your humanity, but part of the design process, and it's how you get better. If you're not making mistakes, you're not going to get any better at what you're doing. So nothing wrong with that. Anyway, all that being said, you all know who I am. I am Roland Taylor, aka Roland Ditsar. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and you can also check out my Gumroad page, my Teespring store, and my Redbubble. All of those will be available on my website. But if you want to find all my links, go to linktree/Roland Ditsar, and you'll find all of my links there to all my stores, all my channels, everything like that. You can check those out one time. So until next time, just reminding you to subscribe, like, and share, and all that good stuff. Hopefully within the next, I don't know, maybe a few months or so, I should be able to start getting back to putting out some YouTube content. I had some pre-recorded stuff to edit, but I haven't had the time to. And there are a few videos here and there that I may do over. But yeah, I should be able to get out some more content. Somewhat of a trickle, because I'm a little busy these days, but I'll be trying to get out some more content here and there. And also look out for some more content like this on Dev, including the upcoming CSS fun stuff on combo breakers, you can download the prep file for that from my Gumroad page. And also make sure you support me on there, buying my themes and stuff. I should have some more themes out. Well, I should say templates, because they're templates. I always mix up the two words, templates and themes, but yeah, you can go and buy my templates from my Gumroad page as well. So yeah, make sure you go and support me there. Anyway, hope you all had a great day and that you have a great weekend. See you next week.